He bought the cabin everyone had avoided for 30 years for a price that didn't even cover the timber, and when he opened the door for the first time, he heard a thin, weak, impossible cry coming from the back of a structure that was supposed to be empty, the cry of a child where there should have been no one. Have you ever felt the world stop when you hear something that shouldn't exist? A sound that freezes your blood and makes every hair on your body stand up, because your mind knows it makes no sense, but your ears swear it's real. But this story actually happened in the rural backwoods of Kentucky in March of 1972, in a hamlet called Pine Ridge, lost between tobacco fields and dense woods. Before I continue this story, I have a quick request. Comment down below where you're watching from, which city, state, or country. I love knowing who is following these stories of resilience and emotion, and if you're enjoying this, leave a like to support the channel. Now let's continue, because what this man found inside that cabin changed his life forever. Theodore Vance was 41 years old when his life ended for the first time. It was on a July morning in 1971 when he woke up to find Helen cold beside him in bed. She was 38, healthy, strong, had a laugh that filled the room and smelled of lavender soap. The night before they had eaten dinner together, talked about remodeling the kitchen, and discussed the new batch of students he would be teaching in the fall. Helen had coughed a little, mentioned her chest felt heavy, nothing serious. By morning, she was gone. Sudden pneumonia, the doctor said. Sometimes it happens like that, he explained with a professional, distant voice. The lungs fill up. The person suffocates in their sleep. There is no time to react. Theodore couldn't process those words. How does someone go to sleep beside you and never wake up? How do you not notice the person you love is dying just inches away? The wake was on a hot afternoon. The small house they shared in the state capital filled with people Theodore barely knew, neighbors, Helen's colleagues from the textile mill, a few mothers of his students. They all said the same things. My condolences. She was so young. God has a plan. Stay strong. Theodore shook hands, thanked them with an automatic voice, but inside something had switched off. He and Helen had no children. They tried for years, but it never happened. At first it hurt, especially for her. Later they accepted it, built happiness in each other. Theodore taught at the local elementary school. Helen took in sewing work at home. On Sundays they went to the market, walked through the park. A simple life, but full. Now that fullness had turned into a gaping hole. The first few months were a fog. Theodore continued teaching because he had to eat, pay bills, occupy his mind. But he came home every day to emptiness. The chair where Helen sat to sew, the stove where she made that pot roast with the special seasoning he never figured out, her pillow that still held the shape of her head. He couldn't sleep in that bed. He slept in the living room on the sofa, curled up, waking in the middle of the night, with a weight on his chest that suffocated him just as Helen had suffocated. In February 1972, 8 months after the funeral, Theodore made a decision. He couldn't take it anymore. Every corner of that house screamed her absence. He needed to leave, go far away, to nowhere, somewhere nobody knew him, where he didn't have to explain his widowerhood, where he could disappear into his own insignificance. He sold the house for a fair price, sold the furniture, sold everything that wouldn't fit in a suitcase. He gathered enough money to restart a modest life. He requested a transfer from the school board to a rural school in any distant location. They accepted. There was a vacancy in Pine Ridge, a village of 900 souls in western Kentucky, 6 hours down a dirt road from the capital, a place where tenured teachers didn't want to go. Perfect, Theodore thought. The further, the better. He arrived in Pine Ridge on a March afternoon with a heavy suitcase and an even heavier heart. The village was small, quiet, suspended in time. A dirt main street, Simple houses of wood and brick, a church with a white steeple in the center, a general store with the door always open, a diner on the corner where men played dominoes. Surrounding it were tobacco farms, some soy fields, and native forest on the edges. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Theodore introduced himself to the school principal, a 60-year-old man named Miller, grey moustache, worn suspenders. Miller shook his hand firmly, said they'd been needing a teacher for months, that he was welcome, and that the community respected educated folks. He informed Theodore that he would start the following Monday, teaching a combined 3rd and 4th grade class, 22 students in total. "And where can I stay while I look for a place to live?" Theodore asked, setting his suitcase down on the office floor. Miller scratched his beard, thinking. "There's Mrs. Higgins' boarding house," he said. "Clean, good food, 3 meals, $10 a week." Theodore thanked him and took the directions. The boarding house was a yellow, single-story home with a small porch, 6 small rooms rented to seasonal workers and travelers. Mrs. Higgins was a widow of about 70, thin, agile, with lively eyes. She showed him the available room, iron bed, wardrobe, window looking out onto a backyard with apple trees. Theodore accepted. In the first few days, he explored the village, greeted people, bought bread at the general store, drank black coffee at the diner. Everyone was cordial but curious. Small-town folks always want to know a stranger's story. Theodore said the bare minimum. Transferred teacher, needed a change of scenery, nothing more. He didn't mention Helen. Speaking her name aloud still opened the wound. On a Saturday morning, Theodore went into the general store to buy soap and overheard a conversation that would change everything. 2 men were arguing near the counter. One of them, a short fellow in a straw hat, commented that he needed a cheap plot of land to build a coop. The other, Mr. Abernathy, the store owner, a heavy-set man in a dirty apron, replied that there was an option. "There's that cabin of the late Silas Thorne," Abernathy said, wiping the counter with a rag. "Been for sale for over 30 years. Nobody wants it. Price is ridiculous." The man in the straw hat made a face. "Not that cabin, Mr. Abernathy," he said, shaking his head. "Place is haunted. Everybody knows that." Abernathy gave a short laugh. "Ghosts don't exist, Roy. That's just ignorant superstition." "But 3 people died there," Roy insisted, lowering his voice. "And they say there are strange noises at night." Theodore, standing in front of the soap shelf, felt curious. He turned and asked where this cabin was. Abernathy looked at him, gauging if it was worth explaining. "It's at the end of Old Hollow Road," he said, pointing in a vague direction. "Leaving the village towards the woods. Wooden cabin, 2 rooms, standing but abandoned. Belonged to Silas Thorne, who died in 1938. Heirs never wanted to live there because of the stories, put it up for sale, but nobody buys." "What stories?" Theodore wanted to know. Abernathy sighed. "They say Silas died strangely, heart stopped out of nowhere. Before him, a family lived there in 1910. The father hung himself in the yard. And they say in the 1920s a woman disappeared from inside the house, body never found. Folks created a reputation that the place is cursed. Nonsense, of course, but you know how the country is, right? Superstition sticks like burrs." "How much do they want for the cabin?" Theodore asked. Abernathy raised surprised eyebrows. "You interested?" "Maybe. How much?" The store owner scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Silas's heirs live in the city, left the cabin with the town clerk here. Last I heard, they were asking $500. The lot is about an acre, house is standing, just needs cleaning and fixing. But since nobody wants it, I reckon they'd take less." $500 was an amount Theodore had left over from the house sale money. He could live in the boarding house spending 10 a week, but that would eat through his savings fast. Having his own place, even if it was an old shack, would be better. And he didn't believe in curses. He was a man of reason, a teacher, a reader. Superstition was ignorance. Deaths happen anywhere. If the price was that low, it was an opportunity. "Where is the clerk's office?" he asked. "2 streets up," Abernathy replied with an expression somewhere between surprise and concern. "But are you sure, sir? Place has been closed a long time. Must have snakes, rats, mold." "I'll take a look first," Theodore said, grabbing the soap and paying at the counter. He left the store with the directions in his head. He walked through the village until he found Old Hollow Road, a dirt track leading away from the center towards the woods. He passed houses spaced further and further apart, lots with vegetable gardens, chickens scratching. At the end of the road, where civilization met the wild, he saw the cabin. It was a small structure, dark wood worn by time, a rusted tin roof, windows with glass broken or missing, the front door hanging on a crooked hinge. Around it, weeds grew waist-high, ancient fruit trees with branches invading the structure. Absolute silence. Not even a bird sang nearby. Theodore approached, stepping through tall grass. The smell of mold and damp wood invaded his nostrils. He stepped up 2 stone steps sunken into the earth, tested the door. It was locked with an old padlock, rust eating the metal. He peered through the dirty window. Inside, gloom. He could make out a floor of planks covered in dry leaves, peeling walls, the remains of broken furniture in a corner. It didn't look worse than he expected. With cleaning, basic repairs, electric light if there was any, it would be habitable. And the silence was good. Exactly what he wanted. Solitude. Distance. A place where he could exist without being bothered. He went back to the village and went straight to the clerk's office. The town clerk was a man in his early 50s named Mr. Sterling. Thin, round glasses, worn suit. When Theodore mentioned interest in Silas Thorne's cabin, the clerk raised his eyes from the document he was reading. "The Thorne cabin," Mr. Sterling repeated with the tone of someone who doesn't believe what they hear. "You know nobody's lived there for decades, right?" "I know," Theodore confirmed, "but I don't believe in stories. I want a cheap place to live. I'm willing to buy." The clerk took off his glasses, wiped the lenses with a handkerchief slowly, a gesture buying time. "Look, Professor," he said with a careful voice, "I'm a man of law, not superstition, but I need to be honest with you. That cabin has a bad reputation. Folks say they hear noises at night, say it has heavy energy. 3 people died there over the years. Maybe it's coincidence, but people believe in the curse. If you buy it, you'll be isolated. Neighbors will be scared to visit. It'll be hard." Theodore held his gaze. "I want to be isolated," he said firmly. "I came here precisely to get away from everything. Ghosts don't scare me. How much will the heirs accept?" Sterling sighed, put his glasses back on. "They ask 500, but between us, they'll accept 350. They want to get rid of it. I'll be frank, I think you're making a mistake, but if you insist, I can broker the sale." "I accept for 350, Theodore said. 2 weeks later, in early April 1972, Theodore Vance signed the deed and received the rusty key to the cabin. Mr. Sterling handed over the document with the expression of someone handing over a sentence, not a property. "Good luck, Professor," he said. "You're going to need it." Theodore took the heavy key and left the office with a mix of relief and anticipation. Finally, he would have his own place. Quiet. Remote. Where he could live the rest of his life without bothering anyone and without being bothered. Where the pain of losing Helen could be felt in peace, without looks of pity, without questions. He bought cleaning supplies at the general store. Broom, rag, soap, bucket, kerosene for a lantern, because he didn't know if the electricity worked. He filled a bag, walked to the cabin under the strong afternoon sun. Standing in front of the door, Theodore felt a small knot in his stomach for the first time. It wasn't fear of hauntings, it was strangeness. How long had this place been closed? 20 years? 30? What did it hold inside besides dust and abandonment? He jammed the key into the lock, turned it with difficulty, rust resisting, heard a click, pushed the door. Wood groaned on a rusty hinge, a sharp sound that cut the silence. The door opened slowly, revealing the shadowy interior. Theodore took a step inside, and he heard it. A cry, weak, muffled, coming from somewhere in the back of the cabin. A child's cry. He froze with one foot still in the air, hand holding the bag. Heart raced. Blood ran cold in his veins. The sound was unmistakable. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't an animal, it wasn't imagination. It was a human cry, infantile, desperate. "Who's there?" Theodore shouted with a voice that came out higher pitched than he intended. The crying stopped suddenly. Silence returned, heavy, oppressive. Theodore stood still, breathing fast, all senses on maximum alert. Waited, nothing, just silence. His rational brain tried to process. A child breaking into an abandoned house? Possible. But why? And why cry like that, as if in fear or pain? "There's someone here," he shouted again. "I'm the new owner. I'm not going to hurt anyone." Nothing. Theodore dropped the bag on the floor, looked for something to defend himself. Picked up a piece of wood leaning against the wall. It wasn't much, but it would do. He advanced slowly through the front room. The floor creaked under his feet. Light entering through the broken windows partially illuminated the interior. He saw the cabin had 2 rooms, front, larger, which would be the living room and kitchen. Back, smaller, which would be the bedroom. The crying had come from the back. Theodore approached the door separating the rooms. It was ajar. He pushed it with his foot, holding the wood raised. The door opened, showing a small room, empty except for the remains of a rusted iron bed in a corner. The window was boarded up, almost total darkness. He entered slowly, eyes adapting to the gloom. There was no one. The room was empty, but the crying had come from there, he was sure. Maybe the child fled through the window, he thought, but the window was boarded from the outside. It was then he heard it again, weaker now, muffled, as if coming from under the floor. Theodore looked at the wooden floorboards, old planks, spaced out, some loose. He knelt, put his ear to the ground. The sound was coming from below, from some space under the house. With trembling hands, he began to pull up the loose boards. The first came up easy, revealing dark earth underneath. The second too, the third. Little by little, he opened a hole in the floor, revealing a compartment dug out under the floorboards. And he saw him. Curled up at the bottom of that dark, dirty hole, thin as a twig, huge eyes shining with fear in a grimy face, was a boy. A real boy of flesh and bone, alive. He looked at Theodore without blinking, body trembling, mouth half open in a silent sob. Theodore felt the world spin. He couldn't process it. There was a child hidden under the floor, a real child, alone, crying. For how long? "Hi," Theodore said with the softest voice he could manage, despite his heart hammering. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you. What is your name?" The boy didn't answer, just watched, shivering. "Are you hurt?" Theodore asked. "Do you need help?" Nothing. Slowly, with slow movements so as not to startle him, Theodore extended a hand toward the hole. "Come," he said, "let's get out of there." "It's okay. I'm a teacher. My name is Theodore." The boy recoiled, pressing against the dirt at the bottom, but his eyes betrayed conflict, fear, but also desperation, as if he wanted help but didn't trust. "Are you hungry?" Theodore tried. "I have food. I can go get it. Bread, milk, whatever you want." The mention of food made something change in the boy's eyes. He swallowed hard, tongue passing over cracked lips. "I'm going to get food right now," Theodore said, standing up slowly. "I'll just be a few minutes. Don't run away, okay? I'm coming back to help you." He ran out of the cabin, heart exploding in his chest. mind in a whirlwind, a child hidden under the floor, alone. How long? Days? Weeks? Who was he? Why was he there? Where were the parents? He ran to the boarding house, went up to his room, grabbed bread he had saved, a bottle of water, a piece of cheese, ran back down. Mrs. Higgins yelled something he didn't hear, returned to the cabin at a sprint. When he entered, he was afraid the boy had vanished, that it had been a hallucination. But no, he was still there, curled in the hole, looking up. Theodore knelt at the edge, held out the bread. "Here," he said, "eat." Slowly, suspicious, the boy raised a dirty hand and took the bread, stuffed it into his mouth with desperate voracity, chewing fast, swallowing without barely chewing. Theodore offered water. The boy drank as if he hadn't drunk in days, water running down his chin. "When did you last eat?" Theodore asked with a lump in his throat. The boy wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His voice came out hoarse, weak. "Many days ago," he said. "Aunt Dottie didn't come back." Theodore felt a chill down his spine. "Who is Aunt Dottie?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. "She took care of me, brought me food, but she stopped coming. A long time ago. I thought she forgot me. I thought nobody was ever going to find me." And it was in that moment, listening to the broken voice of that abandoned child, crying in the dark for days, maybe weeks, waiting for someone who would never return, that Theodore Vance felt something he hadn't felt in 8 months. He felt he was still alive, that there was still a reason to be alive, because that boy needed him. And maybe, without knowing it, he also needed that boy. "First, let's get you out of there," Theodore said, extending both hands into the hole. "Hold on to me, I'll pull you up." The boy hesitated, eyes still distrustful, but after seconds that seemed eternal, he raised skinny arms. Theodore grasped bony wrists, felt cold and dirty skin under his fingers, and pulled carefully. The body was too light, frighteningly light. A child that age should weigh more. Theodore hoisted him out of the compartment as if freeing a wounded bird from a trap. When the boy stood on the floorboards, Theodore saw the full extent of the situation. The child wore torn clothes stained with earth and mold, pants too short, shirt missing buttons, bare feet, fingernails long and black with grime, brown hair matted, grimy face where tears had left clean tracks. But it was the eyes that made the biggest impression. Large, dark, too old for such a young face, eyes that had seen things a child shouldn't see. "How old are you?" Theodore asked, crouching to be at his height. "7, the boy answered with a voice barely audible. "I think 7. Aunt Dottie said I was going to turn 8 this year. What is your name?" "Gabriel." "Gabriel. Beautiful name." Theodore felt something tighten inside his chest. "My name is Theodore," he repeated. "I'm a teacher. I just bought this house. I didn't know there was anyone here. How long have you been in that hole?" Gabriel looked at the dark compartment behind him as if seeing a ghost. "Many days," he said. "Don't know how many. Aunt Dottie told me to stay hidden if she was late, said it was dangerous to come out, but she always came back before. This time she didn't." "Since when?" Gabriel shrugged, a lost gesture. "Sun went up and down many times," he said. "I lost count. Water was running out. Food ran out a long time ago." Theodore felt anger rising, not at the boy, but at the situation. Who was this Dottie who left a child hidden under the floor? Why was Gabriel there? Where were the parents? None of it made sense, but the questions would have to wait. First, he needed to attend to basic needs. "Are you cold?" Theodore asked, touching the boy's arm. The skin was freezing. Gabriel nodded. Theodore took off his own coat and put it over the skinny shoulders. It was too big, swallowing the small body, but at least it provided warmth. "Let's do this," he said with a voice firm but gentle. "I'm going to take you to a clean place, give you a bath, real food, clean clothes. Then we talk, okay? Gabriel looked at him with an expression mixing fear and hope. You won't turn me in? Turn you in to who? Theodore wanted to know. To the bad men. What bad men? Gabriel lowered his eyes. The ones who wanted to take me away. The ones who made my mama leave. The ones Aunt Dottie was afraid of. Theodore took a deep breath, trying to keep calm despite the whirlwind of questions. Nobody is going to take you, he promised, not knowing if he could keep it. You're with me now. Let's go. He took Gabriel by the hand. Small fingers gripped his with surprising strength. They left the cabin together. Sunlight hit Gabriel, making him squint, bringing a free hand to his face. How long without seeing direct light? Theodore didn't want to imagine. They walked along Old Hollow Road toward the boarding house. Theodore was careful, looking around to see if anyone was watching. Not that hiding a child was the plan, but instinct told him to be discreet until he understood the situation. Fortunately, the road was empty. Lunchtime, everyone inside. They entered through the back door of the boarding house. Theodore went up the stairs with Gabriel glued to him, led him to his room. Closed the door, locked it. Gabriel looked around with curiosity mixed with fear. Had he never seen a room like this? Made bed, wardrobe, mirror, chair. Normal things that perhaps weren't normal for him. Sit here on the bed, Theodore said. I'll get hot water for a bath. He went down, found Mrs. Higgins in the kitchen preparing lunch. Asked for a large basin, hot water, soap, towel. She raised an eyebrow but didn't question. The professor had his habits. Theodore silently thanked her for her discretion. He went up with the basin full of warm water, tallow soap, a worn but clean towel. Gabriel was still sitting exactly where he had left him, as if he didn't know what to do. Let's take off those clothes and wash you, Theodore said. Water is warm. It'll feel good. He helped the boy take off the torn shirt, dirty pants. The skinny body revealed was covered in old bruises, yellowing, marks of falls or something worse. Ribs visible. Theodore felt anger rise again, swallowed it. With a wet cloth, he began to wash Gabriel slowly. Dark water ran off, revealing pale skin under layers of grime. Gabriel didn't complain, stayed quiet, eyes closed, as if that care was a forgotten luxury. When he finished, he wrapped him in a towel, dried the matted hair as best he could. You need to cut this hair, he commented, but let's leave that for later. Opened the wardrobe drawer, looked for clothes that might fit. Had an old shirt he used for sleeping. Too big, but it worked. Pants, he had nothing small. Improvised with a belt tightening his own trousers on Gabriel's waist. It looked ridiculous, but functional. Now you eat more, Theodore said, seating Gabriel in the chair. He went down again, came back with a plate of stew, rice, a piece of meat, which he convinced Mrs. Higgins to give as an advance on his lunch. Also brought a glass of milk. Gabriel ate like a starving animal. Theodore had to hold his hand a few times, asking for calm. Slowly or you'll get sick, he warned. Your stomach isn't used to it. But it was hard to hold back days, maybe weeks of hunger. Gabriel cleaned the plate, drank the milk, asked for more. Theodore brought bread and butter. He ate it, asked for water, drank 3 glasses. Finally, belly full, clean body, dry clothes. Gabriel began to relax. Shoulders that were tense lowered. Breathing became calmer. For the first time since Theodore found him, the boy seemed like a real child, not a frightened creature. Now, Theodore said, pulling a chair and sitting in front of him, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Who are you? Where are your parents? Why were you hidden in that house? Gabriel looked at his hands in his lap, started slowly, voice low, stopping sometimes to breathe or swallow tears. My mama's name was Rose, he said. She worked on a big farm. I was born there, but the boss didn't want me to stay. He got mad when he saw me. My mama cried a lot. One day some men came and took my mama away, said she had to go far away. I tried to hold on to her, but they pulled me. I was 4, I think. His voice broke. Theodore waited, giving him time. Aunt Dottie, who was my mama's sister, hid me, Gabriel continued. Said the men wanted to hurt me, that I couldn't let anyone find me. Took me to that house, the cabin. Said nobody went there because they were scared. She made that place under the floor. Said if anyone came, I had to stay there quiet until she came back. I stayed. For how long? Theodore asked with a tight heart. Years, Gabriel answered, as if it were normal. Aunt Dottie came every day, sometimes twice a day, brought food, water, clothes, stayed with me, told stories, taught me to read a little, but always told me to stay hidden, that if the boss's men found me, they'd take me away forever. I was scared, so I obeyed. Theodore closed his eyes, trying to control his emotion. A child from 4 to 7 years old, living hidden, literally under the floor, afraid of being found. What kind of monster did that? What kind of situation justified that? And Dottie, he asked, what happened to her? Gabriel started crying for real now, sobs shaking his small body. She stopped coming, he said between tears. It's been a long time. I waited and waited. First I thought she forgot. Then I thought the bad men got her, or that she died. I was alone in the dark. The food ran out, the rainwater coming through the hole in the roof ran out. I thought I was gonna die there. Theodore couldn't take it. Pulled Gabriel into a tight hug. The boy grabbed onto him, crying against his shoulder, years of fear and loneliness coming out in waves. Theodore held him firm, feeling his own tears wetting his eyes. Not for the first time since Helen's death, but for the first time for another person. You're not going to die, he said with a firm voice, and nobody is going to take you. I promise. But while he spoke, his rational brain was already raising problems. What was he going to do? He had a child hidden in a boarding house room. A child who apparently was being hunted by bad men linked to some farm boss. A child who had been abandoned under the floor of a house for weeks. The situation was absurd, dangerous, complicated. Legally, he should take Gabriel to the authorities. Police, child services if there were any, orphanage. But Gabriel was terrified of that, and Theodore, who knew the reality of institutions for abandoned children in rural areas, knew they were often cruel places. Not to mention that if this story of bosses' men was true, Gabriel could be in real danger. If you could tell me anything else, Theodore tried, still holding Gabriel, that would help me understand. Do you know the boss's name? The farm? Gabriel shrugged against his chest. Aunt Dottie never said the name, just said he was a powerful man, that he bossed a lot of people, that if I showed up he'd make me disappear. And why does he want to hurt you? Don't know, Gabriel admitted. Aunt Dottie said I was trouble for him, that I couldn't exist. I don't understand what that means. Theodore understood with painful clarity. Rose, Gabriel's mother, worked on the farm, got pregnant. The boss didn't want a bastard son, circulating, threatening reputation, inheritance, legitimate family. Kicked the mother out, wanted to eliminate the child. An old story in the rural South, a story of power, abuse, injustice. If you like this story so far, leave a like to support the channel. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. Theodore spent the rest of that afternoon trying to decide what to do. Gabriel slept in his bed, exhausted, body finally relaxing after weeks of terror. Theodore sat in the chair, watching the boy sleep, mind working in circles. Option 1, take Gabriel to the authorities, explain the situation, let the system handle it. Rational, correct, legal. But dangerous for Gabriel, potentially fatal if the boss's men had influence, and it would probably result in Gabriel going to an overcrowded, cruel orphanage from where he would come out traumatized or worse. Option 2, keep Gabriel hidden, at least temporarily, while he investigated the situation and discovered who the boss was. What happened to Dottie? If there was a way to protect the boy legally. Illegal, risky, complicated. But it would keep Gabriel safe and give time to understand the full context. Option 3, run away with Gabriel far away, to another city, another state, start over with a new identity, extreme, desperate, permanent flight. It wasn't viable, it was between 1 and 2. And while he thought, looking at Gabriel's face, relaxed in sleep, Theodore realized the decision was already made. He couldn't hand over that boy. Not after seeing the fear in his eyes, not after hearing his story, not after feeling the connection that grew between them in those few hours. For the first time in 8 months, Theodore had something besides pain to feel. He had a purpose. He had someone who needed him, and maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what Helen would have wanted, for him to find a reason to continue. Even if that reason came in the form of a frightened boy hidden under the floor of a haunted cabin. He decided he would keep Gabriel hidden for now, but he needed help. He needed someone to examine the boy, verify his health, provide medical guidance, and he needed information about Dottie. What happened to her? Was she alive? Dead? At nightfall, when Gabriel woke up, Theodore asked more questions. Discovered that Dottie was a washerwoman, lived somewhere in the village, came to visit Gabriel secretly, usually at night or early morning. Gabriel didn't know the exact address, but said she had long black hair, was thin, had a birthmark on her face. With this information, Theodore went down for dinner. At the boarding house table, Mrs. Higgins served soup and bread. Other boarders ate in silence. Theodore waited for the right moment and asked casually, "Mrs. Higgins, did you know a woman named Dottie?" "Dorothy, washerwoman, long hair, mark on her face." The landlady stopped with the ladle in the air. "I knew her," she said slowly. "Dottie Corbin. Poor girl. Died about a month ago, more or less. Hit by a truck on a rainy night on the main road. Why do you ask?" Theodore felt his stomach turn. So Dottie was dead. Dead for a month. And Gabriel stayed alone in the hole all that time, waiting for her. A whole month. How did he survive? Rainwater, scraps of food she had left. Impossible willpower. "Just curiosity," Theodore lied. "Heard the name somewhere." But Mrs. Higgins wasn't a fool. She looked at him with penetrating eyes. "If there is something you need to tell me, Professor, better speak up. I don't like secrets under my roof." Theodore made a quick decision. He needed an ally, and Mrs. Higgins, despite being severe, seemed like a woman of good heart. "Can I talk to you in private after dinner?" he asked quietly. She nodded, serious. Later, in the back pantry where Mrs. Higgins kept supplies, Theodore told everything. Buying the cabin, the crying, Gabriel hidden in the hole, the story the boy told. Mrs. Higgins listened in silence, expression closed. When he finished, she sighed deeply. "I knew Dottie," she said. "Quiet woman, hard worker, washed clothes for some families here. Always seemed scared, as if she carried a heavy secret. Now I understand why. Poor creature, caring for a nephew in secret for years, living in fear, and died without managing to guarantee the boy's safety." "What do I do?" Theodore asked. "I can't hand Gabriel over." "But I also don't know how to protect him." Mrs. Higgins crossed her arms, thoughtful. "First, need to examine the boy. Could have disease, severe malnutrition. There is a doctor here in the village, Dr. Amelia Brooks. Trustworthy woman, discreet. A widow too, understands pain. Go talk to her tomorrow morning. Second, need to discover who this boss is that wants the boy. If it's who I'm thinking, the situation is worse than you imagine." "Who?" Theodore wanted to know. "Otis Price," said Mrs. Higgins with a low voice. "Owner of Sunnybrook Farm, biggest property in the region. Powerful man, rich, ruthless. If Gabriel is his son, and everything indicates he is from the story you told, then we are poking a hornet's nest. Otis has 3 legitimate children, wife from a traditional family. He won't want a bastard son showing up to complicate inheritance and reputation. Theodore felt real fear for the first time. Not fear of ghosts or superstition, but fear of a man with power. How to protect Gabriel from someone like that? Mrs. Higgins put a hand on his shoulder. One thing at a time, Professor. First the doctor. Then we think of a strategy. And for now, the boy stays here in your room, hidden. Nobody needs to know, trust me. Theodore thanked her with relief. Having an ally made a difference. The next morning, he left Gabriel sleeping locked in the room, with instructions not to make noise, not to open for anyone. Walked to Dr. Amelia Brooks's house, a simple brick building near the church. Knocked. A woman of about 38 opened the door. Brown hair tied in a bun, face serious but kind, white coat over a simple dress. "Good morning," she said. "Need a consultation?" Theodore introduced himself, explained he was the new teacher, that he had a delicate situation needing medical help and absolute discretion. Amelia studied him for seconds, then opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. In the improvised office in the living room, Theodore told the story again. Amelia listened without interrupting, expression changing from curiosity to shock to determination. "Bring the boy," she said when he finished. "I'll examine him. If he is malnourished, as you say, he needs immediate treatment, and I'll do this without recording anything officially, for now. But Professor, understand, the situation is very grave. A child was kept hidden, abandoned, almost died, and if Otis Price is involved, you are running a risk too." "I know," Theodore said, "but I can't turn Gabriel in. I can't." Amelia nodded. "I understand. I'm a widow too, Professor. I know what emptiness is. I know what it is to seek purpose. If this boy gave you a reason to wake up in the morning, I won't take that from you. Let's solve this together." Theodore went back to the boarding house, got Gabriel wrapped in a blanket to disguise him, took him to Amelia's house through the back. The doctor examined the boy for half an hour, measured weight, height, checked bruises, eyes, throat, listened to heart and lungs. Gabriel cooperated quietly, used to obeying. When she finished, Amelia called Theodore to the living room. Her expression was grave. "Severe malnutrition," she said. "He is weighing 26 pounds when he should weigh at least 45. Anemia, probably worms, chronic dehydration. But he can recover. Needs proper diet, supplements, vitamins. I'll provide everything. Also needs sun, exercise, affection. The physical recovers. The emotional will take longer." She approached, held his arm. "Professor Vance, do you understand what you're getting into? Otis Price is a dangerous man. If he discovers Gabriel is alive, that you are hiding him, there could be violence, could end badly." "I understand," Theodore said, "but look at that boy. Look at his eyes. Someone needs to protect him. If not me, who will it be?" Amelia smiled sadly. "All right, then let's protect him together. But we need to be smart. Can't keep Gabriel hidden in a boarding house forever. And can't stay in the cabin, too isolated, too dangerous. We need a plan." Theodore agreed. But before they could discuss a plan, an event changed everything. That afternoon, returning with Gabriel to the boarding house, Theodore saw strange movement on Old Hollow Road. Two men on horses stopped in front of his cabin, looking around, talking. Men in ranch hand clothes, cowboy hats, machetes at their waists. Theodore changed paths quickly, taking a parallel street, heart racing. Kept Gabriel glued to him, head down. They entered the boarding house through the back without being seen. In the room, locked the door, sat Gabriel on the bed, stood looking through the crack in the window to the street. The riders were still there, talking to someone. Then they rode slowly through the village, as if looking for something. Mrs. Higgins came up minutes later, knocked the agreed code. Theodore opened. Her expression was tense. "Price's goons are making rounds," she warned. asking if anyone saw a strange child, noise at the old cabin. Someone must have commented they heard crying over there, and it reached the wrong ear. They are searching. Theodore felt real panic. Already? How did they find out so fast? Small town, said Mrs. Higgins. Gossip runs, and Otis has ears everywhere. If he suspects Gabriel is alive, he'll turn the village upside down until he finds him. What do I do? Theodore asked, looking at Gabriel sitting on the bed, eyes wide with fear. Mrs. Higgins thought fast. For today, he stays here, locked, silent. Tomorrow early morning, you take him back to the cabin, but don't stay there. Needs to look like you are living there normally. Teacher teaching class, common life. Gabriel stays hidden during the day. You take care of him at night, and pray that Otis gives up looking. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was what they had. That night, Theodore lay on the floor beside the bed where Gabriel slept, looked at the ceiling, listening to the boy's light breathing, and thought of Helen. What would she say about this? Would she approve? Would she say he was crazy? Or would she smile and say it was exactly the kind of right thing to do? He wanted to believe the last option, because for the first time since her death, Theodore felt life had meaning. Scary, dangerous, complicated meaning, but meaning nonetheless. And he wasn't going to give up on Gabriel. Didn't matter what Otis Price did. Didn't matter how many goons he sent. That boy was his now. Not biologically, not legally, but in every way that mattered. And Theodore would protect Gabriel with his own life, if needed, because saving that child meant, in some strange and unexpected way, saving himself. The first days at the cabin were constant vigilance. Theodore woke up before the sun, prepared food for Gabriel, hid the boy in the compartment under the floor, now covered with an old mat and blanket, closed the boards, leaving cracks for air to circulate, left to teach at school, came back at lunchtime running, brought fresh food, spent half an hour with Gabriel talking quietly, went back to school. At the end of the afternoon, returned permanently, took the boy out of hiding, let him breathe fresh air inside the cabin with windows closed. Gabriel obeyed without complaining, was used to hiding, to staying quiet, to existing as a secret. But Theodore saw the cost of it in his eyes. A 7-year-old boy should play, run, scream, laugh loud. Gabriel did everything in silence, as if afraid his own existence was a crime. In the first 3 days, Price's henchmen circled the village asking questions, knocked on Theodore's door once. He opened with heart racing, keeping his body blocking the entrance. It was 2 men, a fat one with a mustache, another skinny with a scar on his face. "You're the new teacher," the fat one said. "Bought the old cabin, right?" "That's right," Theodore confirmed, keeping voice firm. "Any problem?" The man looked over his shoulder, trying to see inside. "We heard tell there was strange noise coming from here. Child crying. You hear anything like that?" Theodore pretended to think. "Crying? No, never heard it. Must be wind in the old boards or an animal. Bobcat makes a noise that sounds like a child sometimes." The skinny one spat on the ground. "Can we take a look inside?" "Prefer you didn't," Theodore said with a harder tone. "It's my house. I have nothing to hide, but I also don't like invasion. If you have a search warrant, show it. If you don't, get off my property." The 2 exchanged a look. The fat one gave a short laugh. "All right, Professor. No offense. Just investigating a rumor. But if you hear something strange, let Mr. Price know. He pays well for information." They left. Theodore closed the door, leaned against it, breathing uncontrolled. Gabriel was under the floor during all that, listening. When Theodore opened the boards later, found the boy trembling, eyes wet. "They came," whispered Gabriel. "It was the bad men. I recognized the voice." "But they didn't find you," Theodore said, pulling him out, hugging him. "And they won't find you, I promise." But the promise sounded fragile even to himself. Dr. Brooks visited discreetly, always at dusk, bringing medicines, vitamins, nutritious food. Examined Gabriel, measured progress. The boy was gaining weight, color returning to his face, energy increasing. Physically, recovering. Emotionally, still carried scars. On one of those visits, 2 weeks after Theodore found Gabriel, Amelia brought news. "I did a discreet investigation," she said, sitting in the old chair Theodore had fixed. "Talked to a retired midwife who attended farm workers. She confirmed it. Rose, Gabriel's mother, was a maid at Sunnybrook Farm. Got pregnant in 1964. Otis Price paid for her to leave, threatened saying if she said anything, he would destroy her whole family. Rhodes went to another town, had Gabriel, but died when he was 3. Late puerperal fever, postpartum complications never treated right. Dottie, her sister, took Gabriel and brought him back here, but hidden. Lived years caring for him in secret, terrified Otis would find out. And why does Otis want Gabriel to disappear so badly?" Theodore asked. "Bastard child isn't news on a farm." Amelia hesitated. "Because Gabriel is the firstborn," she revealed. "Born in March 1965. Otis's legitimate children are from 1966, 1968, and 1970. If Gabriel is recognized, technically he has a right to inheritance, at least part of it. Otis won't allow it. His wife, Lucinda, comes from a traditional family, brought a large dowry. If she knows about an older bastard's son, she could annul the marriage, take the properties. Otis has a lot to lose." "So Gabriel is a threat simply for existing," Theodore concluded, feeling anger grow. "Exactly," Amelia confirmed. "And Otis is a man who eliminates threats. Theodore, I have Gabriel's medical documentation now. I can attest to severe malnutrition, abandonment, maltreatment by omission. I can attest he needs protection, but I don't know if that's enough against Otis's power." "It has to be enough," Theodore said with determination, "because I'm not handing Gabriel over. If I need to, I'll go to the judge, the prosecutor, the governor. I'll expose Otis publicly. He might have power here, but there are laws. There are higher authorities." Amelia looked at him with a mix of admiration and concern. "You changed, Professor," she observed. "When you arrived here, you were a broken man, dead inside. Now you have fire in your eyes. Gabriel did that for you." Theodore looked at the boy sleeping on the improvised bed they had set up. "And I need to do this for him," he said. "He saved me in a way he doesn't even realize. I need to save him back." The tension exploded on a Thursday afternoon, early May. Theodore was at school teaching geography to the class, explaining regional divisions, when Principal Miller entered the room with a tense expression. "Professor, can you come with me a moment?" he asked. Theodore felt immediate alarm, asked students to keep reading the book, followed Miller out. In the hallway, the principal closed the door, lowered his voice. "Otis Price is here," he warned. "Came personally. Wants to talk to you. He's in the office." "About what?" Theodore asked, despite already knowing the answer. Miller shrugged, uncomfortable. "Didn't say, but Professor, be careful. Otis is a dangerous man when he wants to be. Half the land in this village belongs to him, has influence over the mayor, sheriff, judge. Don't confront him directly." Theodore took a deep breath, preparing himself. "Thanks for the warning," he said, "but I won't bow down to him." He entered the small office. Otis Price was sitting in Miller's chair as if it were his, which probably was practically true. He was a man of 55, strong body despite age, grey hair slicked back with grease, expensive clothes for rural standards, well-cut brown suit, polished leather boots, gold ring on his finger. Face was authoritarian, square jaw, clear and cold eyes. "Professor Theodore Vance," he said without standing. "Sit down." "Prefer to stand," Theodore replied, maintaining posture upright. Otis smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "As you wish. I'll get straight to the point. I bought the old cabin you're living in." "It's not for sale," Theodore said. "Everything is for sale for the right price," Otis retorted. I offer $1,000, 3 times what you paid, cash in hand today. I don't want to sell. Otis's eyes hardened. Professor, don't be a fool. That cabin isn't worth anything, falling apart. Why would anyone refuse easy profit? Because it's my home, Theodore said, and I like it there. Otis stood up, approached. He was taller than Theodore, used that to intimidate. Heard rumors, he said with a low and dangerous voice. Rumors there's a child hidden in that cabin. Boy, about 7 years old, is that true? Don't know where you got that idea, Theodore lied, keeping voice firm despite heart racing. I live alone. Otis studied his face, looking for the lie. Because if there was a child, he continued, it would be my duty as a citizen to notify authorities. Missing child, kidnapped maybe, serious crime. Professor could lose job, go to prison. If there were an abandoned child, Theodore corrected, it would be the duty of any person to protect him, especially if the child was in danger, if someone wanted to hurt him. In that case, hiding him would be an act of compassion, not a crime. Otis's face went red. They stared at each other in tense silence. Finally, the rancher stepped back. Listen well, he said with a voice controlled but vibrating with contained rage. I don't know what you think you know. I don't know what game you're playing, but this village is mine. The people here owe me, the sheriff, the judge, the mayor, everyone. If I say you are a criminal, you will be. If I say a ghost child doesn't exist, he won't exist, understand? I understand you have power, Theodore said. But power is not the same as justice, and there are authorities above this village, above your control. Otis gave a bitter laugh. Idealist professor, how touching. But idealism doesn't protect anyone. Think well on your position. Think about what you can lose. He left, slamming the door. Theodore stood still, hands trembling, cold sweat on his back. Had just made a powerful enemy, but couldn't turn back. Gabriel depended on him. That night, Theodore told everything to Amelia and Mrs. Higgins, who came together to the cabin. The three discussed options until late. Can't continue like this, Amelia said. Otis knows, or at least suspects strongly. He will act. Can order goons to invade the cabin, take Gabriel by force, hurt you in the process. So what do I do? Theodore asked, desperate. Run away with Gabriel? To where? No, said Mrs. Higgins firmly. Running doesn't solve it. Otis has reach. You wouldn't manage to hide forever. Need to confront this head-on, legally. How? Theodore wanted to know. He said he controls the sheriff, the judge, everyone. Amelia thought. But doesn't control the state attorney, she said. Doesn't control the press in the capital, doesn't control the whole structure. If you make the case public with proof, with witnesses, Otis won't be able to simply make Gabriel disappear without answering for it. If you are enjoying this story, leave a like and share with someone. Stories like this need to be told. Theodore understood the plan. Needed evidence, testimony, documentation. Needed to build a solid case before going public. And needed to do it fast, before Otis acted. In the following days, Amelia prepared a detailed medical report. Documented Gabriel's malnutrition, bruises, evidence of prolonged abandonment. Included photographs they had taken right in the first days. Wrote a technical statement attesting the child had been kept in inhumane conditions, suffered severe trauma, needed immediate legal protection. Mrs. Higgins gathered testimonies, talked to the retired midwife who had attended Rose and confirmed Otis was Gabriel's father, talked to neighbors who had seen Dottie caring for a hidden child, talked to washerwomen who worked with Dottie and knew of the secret she carried, gathered written, signed declarations. Theodore wrote his own account, how he found Gabriel, the state he was in, the story the boy told. Wrote about Otis's veiled threats, about goons investigating, about the attempt to buy the cabin. In a week, they had a complete dossier, but before they could act, Otis made his move. It was early Monday morning when Theodore woke up to the sound of horses and voices outside the cabin, lit the lantern, jumped from the bed where he slept with Gabriel beside him, looked through the crack in the window, saw 5 men on horses holding lanterns and flashlights surrounding the property. "Gabriel, wake up," he whispered, shaking the boy. "Quick, to the hiding place." But there was no time. The door was broken open with a violent kick. 3 men entered, Price's goons, machetes in hand. The fat one with the mustache who had come before, the skinny one with the scar, and a third, Theodore, didn't know. "Well, well," said the fat one, advancing. "Seems the professor lied. There is a child here." Gabriel was huddled on the bed, eyes wide with terror. Theodore put himself between the boy and the men, arms open, protecting. "Get out of my house," he ordered with a voice trying to be firm. "This is trespassing. It's a crime." The skinny one laughed. "Crime is kidnapping a child, Professor. We came to get the boy. Boss's orders." "He isn't going anywhere," Theodore said. "Gabriel is under my protection. If you touch him, I go to the authorities." "What authorities?" mocked the third man. "The sheriff, the judge? Everyone works for Boss Otis. Nobody is going to help you." But before they could advance, a female voice cut the tension. "But I will," said Dr. Amelia Brooks, entering through the broken door. Behind her, Mrs. Higgins and, surprisingly, Principal Miller and 3 more men Theodore recognized as small landowners from the village. Amelia held a brown folder. "This child is under my medical care," she announced with a firm voice. "I have complete documentation of abandonment, abuse, severe malnutrition. Any attempt to remove him without a court order will be reported to the state prosecutor, and unlike what you think, your boss doesn't control everything." Mrs. Higgins stepped forward. "And we are witnesses," she said, pointing to the group behind her. "We came because Theodore warned us something might happen. We are respectable citizens of this village. If anything happens to him or the boy, we will all testify. You really want to create a public scandal?" The goons exchanged uncertain looks, didn't expect resistance, much less witnesses. The fat one spat on the floor. "This isn't over," he growled. "Boss Otis doesn't like being crossed." "Then tell Boss Otis," Amelia said with a cutting voice, "to come personally, in front of everyone, in the light of day, and explain publicly why he wants to take a child he abandoned years ago so badly. I'm sure his wife will love to know that story." The threat hit the mark. Otis couldn't risk public scandal, couldn't risk his wife finding out. The goons retreated, left the cabin huffing empty threats, mounted horses, left. Theodore collapsed in the chair, legs trembling from adrenaline. Gabriel ran to him, held on, crying. The support group entered completely. Mrs. Higgins closed the broken door as best she could. "Not over," warned Amelia. "Otis will try again, different way. We need to act fast. Tomorrow morning, we go to the capital. You, me, Gabriel, and all this evidence. We go straight to the courthouse, to the district attorney. Let's file for legal protection for Gabriel and a complaint against Otis." "This is war," said Miller seriously. "Otis is a powerful man, could destroy us all." "Then let him destroy," replied Amelia. But not in silence, not without a fight. Theodore looked at Gabriel, still trembling in his arms. Looked at those people. Some he barely knew, risking themselves for a child not even theirs. Felt immense gratitude, but also heavy responsibility. "Let's do this," he agreed. "But if anyone wants to back out, I understand. I won't judge." Nobody backed out. The next morning, before sunrise, Theodore, Gabriel, Amelia, and Mrs. Higgins left in a borrowed truck towards the capital. The trip took 6 hours on precarious roads. Gabriel slept most of the time, head in Theodore's lap, finally feeling safe despite everything. In the capital, they went straight to the courthouse. Amelia knew a young prosecutor, recently arrived from the big city, an idealist named Mr. Reynolds, who wasn't bought by local schemes yet. They presented the case. Mr. Reynolds listened, read documentation, examined photos, spoke personally with Gabriel, his expression hardened by the minute. "This is a very grave case," he said. "Abandonment of a minor, negligence, attempt to conceal paternity, and if what you say about threats is true, could constitute attempted homicide too. I'll open an inquiry immediately, and I'll request police protection for the boy. But Otis has influence," warned Theodore. "He said he controls the local sheriff judge." "Might be," admitted Reynolds, "but doesn't control me and doesn't control the state court judges. Let's do this through proper channels. I'll file for temporary custody of the boy in your name, Professor, while we investigate paternity and circumstances of abandonment. If Otis wants to contest, he'll have to do it judicially, presenting DNA, assuming paternity, explaining why he abandoned a son for years. Doubt he wants that exposure." Indeed, Otis Price didn't want it. 2 weeks later, when officially notified about the inquiry and custody request, the rancher tried intimidation. Sent expensive lawyers, threatened lawsuits, tried to bribe, but Mr. Reynolds didn't yield. And when the Capital Press picked up the story, leaked strategically by Amelia to a journalist friend, the scandal became public. "Powerful rancher abandons son and threatens protectors," the headline read. Lucinda, Otis's wife, read the paper, and the empire of lies the husband had built collapsed. She came from a traditional Catholic family, didn't tolerate betrayal and child abandonment. Threatened divorce, bigger scandal, loss of dowry lands. Otis, cornered, retreated. Through lawyers, offered a deal. Would formally renounce any paternal right over Gabriel. Would not contest Theodore's custody. In exchange, wouldn't be criminally prosecuted, and story would be hushed up. Reynolds brought the proposal to Theodore. "What do you want?" he asked. "Criminal justice against Otis, which might be hard to get given his power. Or legal guarantee that Gabriel stays with you forever, without future threat." Theodore didn't hesitate. "I want Gabriel," he said. "Safe, with me, legally. The rest doesn't matter." Deal was accepted. In July 1972, a judge signed temporary custody of Gabriel to Theodore Vance. Adoption process was started. Otis Price signed paternity waiver, paid a considerable sum as retroactive support, which was deposited in an account for Gabriel's future education. When Theodore left the courthouse with the signed paper in hand, Gabriel by his side holding firmly to his hand, he felt something he hadn't felt since before Helen died. He felt wholeness. It wasn't the same wholeness as before. It wasn't the happiness of a childless couple who were enough for each other. It was different. It was unexpected fatherhood, late, born of tragedy and miracle mixed. It was a connection between two broken souls who fixed each other. Gabriel looked at him with eyes that were no longer just scared, had trust now, had hope. "Dad," he called for the first time voluntarily, testing the word on his tongue. Theodore knelt, hugged the boy tight. "Yes, my son," he answered with a choked voice. "Yes." They returned to Pine Ridge in late July. The whole village knew the story, from papers, gossip, witnesses. Reaction was mixed. Some admired Theodore's courage. Others thought he had caused unnecessary trouble. Otis Price still had power, was still feared, but didn't have absolute control anymore. A crack had been opened. Theodore and Gabriel went back to the cabin, but it wasn't a haunted cabin anymore. With help from Miller, Mrs. Higgins, Amelia, and other supporters, they did a renovation drive. Fixed the roof, replaced rotten boards, painted walls, installed electricity borrowed from the nearest pole, planted a vegetable garden in the back, built a coop for chickens Amelia gifted. The compartment under the floor, which had been Gabriel's prison, was permanently closed. Theodore filled it with dirt, covered with new boards, nailed firm. Never again would someone hide there. Never again would there be fear in that place. Gabriel began to transform. Proper food, sun, exercise, affection. Body gained weight, muscles height, face gained color, but more importantly, personality began to emerge. The boy who had lived in silence began to talk. Shy at first, then more confident, had curiosity about everything, how things worked, why sky was blue, where birds slept. Theodore answered everything with infinite patience, took Gabriel to school, sat him in the back of the class while he taught. Gabriel absorbed knowledge like a sponge, learned to read fluently in months, learned basic math, geography, history, had a lively intelligence, blocked by years of fear, now released. At night, they sat on the small porch Theodore built, looked at stars. Gabriel asked about Helen. Theodore told stories, how she laughed, how she cooked, how she loved. Gabriel listened seriously, then said, "Would she like me?" Theodore always answered, "She would love you, just like I love you." Amelia visited frequently, not just as a doctor, but as a friend. Maybe something more was growing between her and Theodore, slow, careful, respectful of both their lost spouses. But they had no rush. Gabriel was the priority. The rest would come in time if it was meant to come. In November 1972, the adoption process was finalized. Gabriel Corbin Vance, officially registered, son of Theodore Vance. Last names of Dottie and Helen mixed in Gabriel, new family born from fragments of lost families. On the night of the final signing, Theodore sat with Gabriel on the porch. Full moon illuminated the silent village. Wind brought smell of jasmine. "Dad," said Gabriel, and the word already sounded natural, "do you think Aunt Dottie is happy?" Theodore looked at the sky. "I think so," he replied. "I think she gave her life to keep you safe. And in the end, even without being here, she succeeded. Because she led me to you, or you to me. Don't know for sure. And my mama Rose is happy too," guaranteed Theodore, "because her son, who she had to leave, found a home. Found someone who loves him. It's what every mother wants." Gabriel thought about that in silence, then asked, "And your Helen?" Theodore felt a tear fall, but it was a good tear. "My Helen is happy too," he said, "because I was dying of sadness, and you saved me, gave me a reason to wake up in the morning, to laugh again, to live again. Helen would love this, would love you." Gabriel leaned his head on Theodore's shoulder. "I love you too, Dad," he said with a small but certain voice. And in that moment, sitting on the porch of a cabin everyone avoided for 30 years, with a son not of blood but of heart, Theodore understood. The cry he heard that first day wasn't a haunting, it was a call. It was life asking to be saved. And by saving Gabriel, he saved himself. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unlikely place. Sometimes cure comes disguised as misery. Sometimes family isn't the one we are born into, but the one we choose, or the one that chooses us. The cabin nobody wanted for 30 years, which carried stories of death and fear, had finally found life. And the mysterious crying that haunted its walls in silence for so long had finally found an answer. The answer was love. It was protection. It was two broken people becoming whole together. Years later, when Gabriel grew up and became a man, he would tell his own story. Would tell about Aunt Dottie, who sacrificed everything, about Mother Rose, who he barely knew, but always loved. About Father Theodore, who risked everything for a child he found crying in the dark. And he would end saying, "Sometimes being saved and saving someone are the same thing. My father found me, but I found him too. And we both found hope where it seemed impossible. In the cabin nobody wanted, in the cry nobody else heard, in the love nobody expected. But that changed everything.